player Will.
Welcome back, Visions fans. Ready Player Will here. I know it's been a while. I think I got my headset problem figured out, though. Hopefully this sounds okay, but I figured kick things off with the Exia quick hit character review, seeing that she's being released tomorrow. And so, getting into things, she is a brand new DPS being added to the game as part of the water element. She is part of the staff devout class for job-based vision card eligibility. And on that note, she does equip staffs, obviously. She does do magic damage types primarily, but is very much known for a missile type attack in her kit as well. So while she does function primarily as a magic attacker, one of those is a missile type, so very important to keep that in mind when thinking about the damage types when you see Exia in the game. They've given her the unique main job of Foreseer of Oracles with the Supplicant and Time Mage subjob as a new 100 cost unit. Now, some of the general things about her, there's a lot to cover. Honestly, kind of hard to put it into bullet point form, but doing my best here. She does have primarily an incredible amount of utility to pass on to herself and allies. The ability to seal enemy dispel capabilities, and that does include all of the major buffs that you see, but also haste and damage up percent that your team might have, which she does have on her limit break to pass on to allies. So that ability to not allow your enemies to dispel anything on your team is monumentally important. We're seeing how good Shreka is with that at the moment, particularly in a Sephiroth meta where he can dispel things on hit. So this is really a direct counter to Sephiroth's capability there. Now, as a unit, she's got great bulk and sustain in the fight with the ability to reduce enemy physical damage. She can extend buffs and debuffs by one turn from a passive that she has. She can also innately reduce physical and magical damage by 25% for 2 hits with a limit break that increases fire resistance, crit evade, and will pass on to allies the ability to lower enemy human killer on hits. That's basically a modifier reduction for total damage. So all of those things kind of add up to that brawler style or sustain style gameplay that she has. She does have some big nuke damage potential though with that piercing missile attack I was alluding to. It's a 30% missile imperil. It also breaks magic barriers and dispels shell. That's 2 of the 4 like major magic mitigators, if you will. And when you combine that with her second self buff, that self buff allows her on hit to reduce enemy unit res by 15%. So that single target ability not only will have the missile imperil, but also the unit imperil on it. That same ability also has 50 healing power down on it, so a lot of great potential there to pierce through enemies and obviously pass on that healing power down to them as well. Now finally, in terms of other offensive capabilities, she's got 2 different select 2s. One of them is a 60% unit resistance crush with a curative sequential ability. So she'll use the offensive ability and then she will cure a teammate afterward. I'm sorry, I just realized my camera was in the wrong spot. And the second select 2 here is a Dispel Re-Raise, which will heal herself when killing an enemy. So all of those things really add up to a lot of big damage potential, a lot of great sustain for herself and the team, and a lot of good general bulk on the battlefield, in addition to just providing a ton of utility with the remove erase and the healing power down and the sealing buff potential and the limit break for what it gives to allies. A lot there to really like. Now for team building purposes, Water and Staff Devout are in an excellent place at the moment, so Exia comes in to really gives them some juice. Water in general has a lot of really still viable units in the game relative to other elements. Summer Glaciella still has legs, Kadaj is still a new gen unit, even Young Eld has seen a small resurgence with Ramada alongside him. Shadow Lynx has not admittedly been the impact we want, but as far as missile units go, she probably is still one of the best missile units in the game. And the Veritas of the Water, who everyone likely has access to at this point, certainly a consideration. In addition to the other Staff Devout units, Soul still has a time and place. Lucille is still a top tier meta potential support. And even Angela and Shells for cost limited things are still considerations for Staff Devout as well. And when you mingle them with what other good potential synergies, there are quite many. Spear is definitely one of them, and although admittedly not a ton of great excellent Spear units, the vision card support is absolutely still there, as is the glove potential. They have a lot of great vision cards there, which again, some of them are limited, some of them you may not have gotten, and some of these teams do require the Exia vision card here, which you can see my cursor hovering over. Gloves and Greatswords are 2 major groups that her new vision card coming the week after connects her to. And on that note, Greatsword is, again, similarly a very good connection. Some really high impact vision cards there that are also permanent pool. 4 of these 5 I have on the screen are all permanent pool for Greatsword. Katana obviously is a no-brainer here considering how great the units themselves are, but even the vision cards you'll likely notice have some great overlap with some of these other classes. The Ramada vision card, the limited Kadaj vision card, the Vega vision card is prevalent in many of these teams, so Katana also being a major factor in that group, and Sword Red Mage is as well. Now here's the thing, the cards are not ideal, but they have 5 different cards in common, and when I say ideal, they're not the typical agility percent, AoE res, unit res, so while they are not necessarily those main slot vision cards, there's no doubt that they have some good vision card synergy that exists. It's really more a function of how good the Sword Red Mage characters are, where obviously you look at a unit like Agrias, Summer Glaciella, or Gilgamesh, there's no denying how high impact those units are, that it doesn't take a ton of vision card synergy to still make them a good team. Which, on that note, my top 3 favorite teams are primarily this top one here with the new Sodali unit, that it's a load of magic damage and self-sustain. I do like either Lucille or Resnick. Both of them offer completely different things to the team, but both equally valuable in many ways. And the nice thing here is that while we do have the new Halloween Alaya unit coming out, and some people might be nervous about Thunder God Sid and maybe some extra lightning now that Exia is coming out, Sodali does kind of offset that a little bit in that matchup where he is an Earth unit, obviously. So if that is a concern of yours, this top team does address it a little bit. The second team here is actually relatively surprising, but it is a popular one used on JP, and for some good reasons. It's the Exia, Agrias, and Gilgamesh team, and not only do they have a lot of synergy between the water and ice dark espers, which still are doing very well with the modern power creep of the game, but as I mentioned, Sword Red Mage does have some synergy too, and both Agrias and Gilgamesh are part of the Sword Red Mage group, so they do have some overlap. It's not as much sustain as this first team is, not as much self-healing in some instances, but as I mentioned, Exia does have some sequential curative potential to teammates. Gilgamesh can heal back some damage based on his follow-up. Agrias, I know, does have some curative potential too. Which brings us to the third team, which is kind of more classic mono water team. And this is a fun theorycraft team because Kadaj, upon his release, we noticed he could be a very strong unit, but was very exposed to Dispel. And Exia absolutely solves that for him, where she can seal the enemy Dispel capability. So that does amplify Kadaj's value a fair bit here. But this is straight up a well-rounded team that has some good slash chain synergy. They do have some good innate self-sustain between the 3 of them. It does skew on the higher side of accuracy between Kadaj and Jum, so that is a nice component of team building that's a little easier to build around. But I do have an honorable mention 4th team here. I don't have high hopes for it, but I do think it's worth an honorable mention, and that's going with the Mono Staff Devout team, where I do think there's something here to be said for a team with Lucille and Angela. This is not necessarily the same high-octane offense as some of these other teams are. This is far more on the bruiser, brawler style team, and it's definitely one that I'm going to be trying out as soon as I can, just to get a better feel for it, because it does look really good to me. Now, my final overall expectations, grading a couple of these things on a scale of 1 to 5, 1 being poor, 5 being amazing. For me, Guild War is amazing. This unit's a 5. I'm not going to go so far as to say like S tier, meta changing, but she's damn close, and we've actually seen that influence on JP, where Exia has completely overtaken the offensive leaderboard because of how good she is against Sephiroth. So in that regard, it's really hard not to be excited for her, but I think at minimum, 5 is a valid grade for Guild War, and the same for Arena, where being Staff Devout, she's a great rainbow unit with so much utility that's very valuable in a wide array of circumstances that I think for Arena, she brings a lot of flexibility. For PvE scores, I'm going with fair. She does have a multi-hit ability on the sub-job that can reduce enemy agility percent, so that is something we look for in some of the PvE rankings. The Time Mage sub-job, which I've not mentioned here yet, does have Quicken on it though, which also is a major factor in some potential PvE scoring with turn order, things that I think 2 is fine considering she doesn't have a lot of other multi-hit capabilities herself. Maybe a 3 because of the Missile and Peril, that might help sometimes, but it's not bad. Now, cost limit, I think is a 4 for great. The thing with Exia is that I don't think she's necessarily a hyper carry 100 cost unit on her own. So when you are thinking about cost restrictions here, your 100 cost is usually like your absolute banger, must-be best character on the team. And while she's damn near close. I don't know if it's worth a 5, but it's certainly very good. The TMR overall is good. It's not my favorite, but it's a nice diamond-shaped TMR that nullifies silence and poison with a regen percent on there too. Overall, I do think it's a good TMR. It's not perfect, but I see myself using it in the future for an overall grade of a 5. I do think this is an amazing unit, and it is no doubt in particular because of how good Sephiroth is that she brings some proportionally really high impact value considering his pick rate. That not only is she that Sephiroth counter in some regard, but she is a key team contributor with the Dispel Seal capabilities. That cannot be understated, and it is the first real time mage option we've had in quite some time because of the quicken capability there. So there's a lot of flexibility not only for auto PvP, where maybe not to be tapped into as much, but for manual play in particular, for the PvE play in particular. This is a really great feather in her cap for her to have. So I'm very excited for this unit. Most people should be too. But that's my thoughts for now. Thanks for watching, everybody. I'll talk to y'all later.